Hello and welcome to the latest edition of Beyond the Politics, our regular examination of the events happening right here in the Quinte region and the people who work so hard behind the scenes to make it all happen. I'm your host, Paul Martin. Joining me in this very special edition, Bay of Quinte MPP and Minister of Energy for the Province of Ontario, Todd Smith.
Hi, Paul. Good to see you.
Good to have you back. So first of all, so many areas we wanted to cover, and we want to sort of start at the top and come on down. So let's first start with your portfolio as a Minister of Energy. There was an announcement just over the course of the last week where you gave some direction to the Ontario Energy Board about reliability in the system. Now this has been in focus, and I read a lot of things you were saying that day because of events like the tornadoes that swept through last year and some of the regular storm damage we have. And it's been a real area of focus to try to improve the reliability of Ontario's energy grid. So what was the thinking behind this statement, and what do you hope will come out of it?
Yeah, climate change is happening. Climate change is having an impact on our weather for sure, but it's also having an impact on our electricity system. And just ensuring that we do have a reliable system compared to most jurisdictions across North America and even around the world. We do have a state-of-the-art system here in Ontario. It might not seem like it at times, especially when your power is out for an extended period of time. But what we're asking the Ontario Energy Board to do is a bit of a study, but also work with local distribution companies like Hydro One and Alexicon and the 55 others across the province to ensure that there's a plan for resiliency around our transmission system, our distribution system. And we saw the Derico, and who knew what a Derico was really before last summer when the one came through the Tweed area along the Highway 7 corridor and caused extensive damage there. We want to look at all of the different ways that we can harden our infrastructure on the energy sector and particularly electricity transmission. And there are different ways to do that. Is burying the wires the best way to do it? Obviously not very cost effective, and in a flood it makes it real challenging to dig up wires. So the OEB is doing a study. They're working with local distribution companies and municipalities just to make sure that the lights are going to be there when we need them. And as I say, although it does seem like there's been more power outages recently, there actually hasn't been. I think we're just more aware of them now because of social media and the fact that there has been an increase in storms. And as you know, as a news guy, weather makes the news probably more than any other subject these days.
Is it one of the things that makes your portfolio challenging, though? Because when people think Minister of Energy, they think energy generation, but that's not where it stops, and the transmission part is just as important, if not more important, because you can have all the power in the world. If it's not getting to someone's home or business, it's no good.
Yeah, absolutely. And making sure that we have the power for the future is also really important. So we work really closely with the independent electricity system operator for system planning. That includes transmission, but also generation, as you say. So we have a grid in Ontario that is world class. It's 90% emissions free, so it's a clean grid. Which has also resulted in us being able to attract massive multi-billion-dollar contracts when it comes to auto EV platforms and all those types of things. But ensuring that we have that reliable generation is really important. That's why we're moving on the SMR file, and I know we'll talk about that, and refurbishment at our nuclear facilities and things. We really are lucky in Ontario to have such a diverse system, and but there is a lot of work that's going to be necessary as electrification really starts to move ahead, both in our EV fleet and in our manufacturing processes for green steel and things like that. We're going to need a lot more megawatts from a lot more generators, and we're also going to probably need to twin a lot of hydro lines, transmission lines, to make sure we can get the power that we need to these new investments and all the people that are moving into the province and the houses that are going to be built.
We'll talk about the St. Thomas announcements, what you just referred to a little bit later, and also nuclear power. But first, there was a second announcement, and I'm not sure if people maybe got the information they needed then, so it's good to bring it up again, which was the overnight electricity rates and differential pricing. So that came up recently, specifically geared towards people who are shift workers or have electric vehicles to charge. So can you go over the basics of that, and how can people really take advantage of that?
Yeah, sure. We call it the ultra-low overnight rate, and what it means is from the hours of 11 p.m. until 7 a.m., you can get your electricity for 2.4 cents a kilowatt hour. So that's really, really cheap. One of the things that we are doing with all the electric vehicle mandates that we've been able to achieve in the province and the eventual move to EVs in the province, and the ICE engine largely being retired, the internal combustion engines being retired, we do want to make sure that the system continues to work efficiently. We have a lot of extra electricity generation in the overnight period, particularly because of the intermittent renewables that we have on the system. And we were sending a lot of that electricity to neighboring jurisdictions at a loss. So I was approached back when I was the opposition critic for energy in 2016, 17, 18 by the Ontario Society of Professional Engineers, who said, why don't we use that here? Use that excess electricity that we have in the overnight period to smooth out our grid, make it work more efficiently. So now with electric vehicles starting to become more commonplace in driveways and parking garages across the province, it's the perfect opportunity to move on this ultra low overnight rate. So what it means is you can opt in to this new price category if you wish. You'll pay more in the peak period, which is between 5 p.m. and 9 p.m. in the evening, right? That's when people are coming home from work, starting up their ovens, putting their TVs on the Leafs or Blue Jays games, and using a little more electricity in most cases. But if you are purchasing an EV, we don't want you plugging it in at 5 o'clock when you get home during that peak period. We want to entice people to set their timer for 3 o'clock in the morning and take advantage of this new ultra-low overnight rate.
We hinted, it occurs to me, we hinted at it a couple of times, but there's something that is occurring in another part of the province, in the area where I grew up, actually, that is going to still have an impact, not just there, but here, because of the opportunity it's going to be. And that's that huge investment in the Volkswagen plant in St. Thomas. And we talked about how the importance of the energy grid, providing the economic development space and the payoffs. This is a big payoff and a big win for the entire province of Ontario.
It's massive. It's historic. It's the first gigafactory for Volkswagen outside of that part of the world, and certainly there was a competition here in North America for that facility. In Ontario and Canada were at the forefront, and we were winners in that competition as well. So it's huge. It's 3,000 direct jobs at the Volkswagen facility, and then 30,000 spin-off jobs. And as you say, those will potentially impact areas even like ours here, which is a long way away from St. Thomas. But the auto parts supply chain is so interconnected, and we're so fortunate to have it here, largely in Ontario, or exclusively in Ontario. And on top of this multi-billion-dollar investment that's being made by Volkswagen, we've seen multi-billion-dollar investments in EV platforms by General Motors in Oshawa and Ingersoll, by Stellantis in Windsor and Brampton. Ford as well in Oakville has announced multi-billion-dollar EV platforms, and Honda in Alliston. We've got the Umicore plant that's going to be making EV battery components in Loyalist Township. Magna International here in Belleville, making the tail lights for the EVs. In our Belleville Industrial Park, that's our largest private sector employer in the Quinte region. Sometimes you forget about the fact that across their 3 plants, they're employing 1,600 or 1,700 people there at Magna. So it is a very connected supply chain, but bringing in a massive, massive company like Volkswagen to Ontario is a real feather in the cap.
Also recently, there was an announcement about there have been a number of incidents targeting police officers in the province, and it is becoming harder to recruit and harder to maintain a viable and well-connected police service. But the province has taken steps to do that, including waiving the fees for police training to try to make it easier to get more people out of the front lines.
Yeah, and not just the violent attacks on police, but just violent attacks on our streets. And certainly you've been hearing about it and reading about it on the TTC in Toronto and in the GTA. So it's, even in Belleville, public safety has become a little bit more top of mind for people because of issues largely in downtowns across small town Ontario. So we do need to attract more people to policing. There has been a challenge in filling some of the vacancies that have been out there. And while we have waived tuition fees for PSWs and healthcare, human resources like nurses, with the Learn and Stay program that's been introduced for healthcare workers. It's really important too for policing. We want to make sure that we are hiring people that have life experience and have the maturity that's necessary and the acumen that's necessary to hold a gun and protect our community, while at the same time not eliminating any of those folks because they couldn't meet the $15,000 cost to go to the Ontario Police College. So I think it's been welcome, certainly by police associations and police services across the province, and it's a good step.
Going back to the Amazon announcement for Belleville, we talked about it before. This is something that has been known behind the scenes for some time, as I called it, the worst kept secret in Belleville history. How great is it to have that out in the open? And what does that mean for a riding like the Bay of Quinte in terms of prestige, in terms of showing it can attract this level of investment?
Yeah, I mean, it's great, and as I mentioned earlier, I think it, with Belleville moving forward on expanding the Northeast Industrial Park in Belleville as well, for me personally, it means we have to continue to push my colleague Carolyn Mulrooney and the folks at Ministry of Transportation to get that new interchange off the 401 at the east side of town, because what this is going to mean is an enormous amount of truck traffic on Canifton Road until we have that new BEAR, as they call it, the Belleville East Arterial Route in our city. So it's an exciting time. It's going to be good jobs. It's a great, huge facility and a coup for the city of Belleville to get it. But as I mentioned earlier, and maybe I didn't allude to this enough, I meet every month or two on a scheduled basis with Minister Fedeli to talk about economic development opportunities, companies that are kicking the tires, looking for land in our province to build the next Amazon fulfillment center or the next Volkswagen battery plant or the next whatever it might be. And it's really, really important for our municipalities to make land available. But there is a stack of potential employers or investors that's that thick that are looking at Ontario right now as a desirable jurisdiction to open their next facility. So it's an exciting time, and we're going to see a lot of growth in this area over the next number of years.
It's important to do it with good partners as well. One of the things that when they came out finally with the announcement, which Mary Ellis made this last week, was that the company is already working on their section of that road leading to the plant. So how important is it to work not just to bring the companies in to advance these developments, but to work with people who are actually going to shoulder some of the economic responsibility for developing some of the things that they need?
Yeah, and these companies do have skin in the game, obviously, as well, right? They're making major investments in deciding to come to a city like Belleville or a region like the Quinte region. So, they do carry a lot of the costs. More and more what we're seeing now, and I experienced it in my time at economic development, was, you're competing against other jurisdictions across North America. So organizations like Jobs Ohio or Invest Quebec, and municipalities and provinces and federal governments are working together and at the state level in the U.S. to make it as attractive as possible to have that next big plant in your community. So you're seeing taxes waived, you're seeing money, obviously, like the Volkswagen deal, billions of dollars coming from the feds, and servicing arrangements from the provinces and states. So it's you need all hands on deck, but you want to attract good corporate citizens to your community as well.
Well, it's an exciting time in the province. Thank you for doing your part to make it what it can be.
Thanks, Paul.
This has been a special edition of Beyond the Politics.